Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Wharton. This podcast has evolved over the 5+ years since it first launched. From now on, I'm going to be talking about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. And also mindset, of course, but mindset of all kinds, not just business mindset. I think. Things are changing for me, as you may have noticed if you've been following me online or listening to this podcast, so anything goes here. I hope you stay along for the ride. Thank you so much for joining us today, and now let's get into this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 332. This is your host, Holly Wharton, and I'm back with another episode with the fabulous Joanna Hennon. Today we are talking about how to step into a new identity even when you're not sure what that looks like. So I've been doing a lot of identity work lately, which is why this was kind of on my list of things I wanted to talk about on the show. I've just listened to my friend Cara Wilde's new masterclass on identity, which will be available very soon. And I've been doing a really interesting exercise with my coach, Lisa Wechtenhiser. My guides, through Lisa, suggested that I get into the space of embodying my new identity and then fill out like a diary or a calendar based on what I would do if I were fully embodying that new identity. So it's kind of a fake diary where it's like, here's what I'm going to do today from this space. But the thing is, it's leading me to taking different actions. I actually do the stuff. And it's leading me to taking different actions than I'd be taking normally, which is opening me up to new possibilities and really helping me step into growth and helping me step into this new identity through taking action. And this has been a fantastic exercise, and I really love it. So you know, if you listen to the show for a while, that I'm really into this identity stuff. I've talked about Cara's new identity masterclass, which I'll link into the show notes, many times. I find it really, really useful. It's free. You can download it yourself and listen to it. And I've also spoken about stepping into new business identity on episode 251 of this show. In today's episode, I think we really get into this topic, and I hope you find it interesting and useful. I think it's a really, really juicy episode. So what are you going to learn? You will learn what is identity and why it's so important. We talk about, can you change your identity and why would you want to? How do you know what your current identity is? How our current identity affects our life now, today? How to get clear on who we need to be to live the life that we want? And why we're sometimes afraid of shifting into this new identity. We also talk about what to do when it feels like life changes our identity for us and imposes something new on us. We discuss what to do when you're in between identities and feeling lost in life. We discuss what this has to do with living proactively and not reactively. We talk about what to do when we don't want to let go of our new identity. Why sometimes we hang on to parts of our identity that aren't useful to us, that we see as negative, but we still cling to them. We discuss why we need to be conscious of self-awareness and self-acceptance when doing this type of identity work, because it's not always useful, even though it is. We finally discuss why our true identity is our soul, and whether or not we need to worry about that. So again, I hope you find this episode interesting and useful. I think it's a really, really juicy one. And as always, I look forward to your feedback. Let's get talking. Hey, Joanna.
Hi, Holly.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Very excited about our topic today because I think it's timely for both of us.
It is, and also timely for everybody else because it's the shift from 2019 to 2020.
Yes, very exciting. Today we're talking about stepping into new identity and how sometimes we're afraid of stepping into new identity if we're not sure what it looks like, but we feel like there needs to be a change, but we're in that weird, murky middle place. So let's start out by talking about what is identity and why is it so important?
Yeah, so I actually, as I said to you before we started recording, I did a lot of writing on this recently because identity has become like the main focus of my work and helping people to have more fulfilling, more meaningful, more successful lives. And I was really considering, like, I keep talking about identity and identity shifts, but like, do people actually know what that is? Like, I mean, I just spend a lot of time like thinking about really weird shit. So,
well, I feel like identity shifts are something that you and I talk about, and Cara. Like, I feel like if you're in like the coachy personal development world, perhaps that's something you talk about a lot, but it's certainly not something I ever thought about or talked about before I got into this world. And I feel like my life would have been really different if I had been aware of this stuff at an earlier point in my life. Because there have been points where I really suffered identity shifts that were unplanned or were, and it's confusing.
I think like we do know the concept of identity, but I just think that we generally don't give it as much importance as it actually has. So what I have discovered over the years of deep personal development work, of teaching personal development work, of, working with hundreds, thousands of people, is that identity is at the core of everything. So whether you're talking about manifesting or in any way, like creating something different in your life or changing something in your life, like we always get it backwards. So we always focus on what we want to have, what we want to experience, and then what we want to do, right? Or what we need to do in order to have that. So I want this level of success. Let me plan out the logical steps. Like, what do I need to do that? And we forget about the be. We forget about the person who's actually doing the doing. And in my years of really like delving deep into this stuff, I've realized that we have it the wrong way around, and you can't do it that way. This is why most people will set these goals and will make these plans and nothing will change. I'm sorry if this is making you sad listening to this, listeners, but that's the truth. Most people will never make the changes they say they want to make. That's statistics show us that, and look around you. Like your whole community will show you that as well. And I think that's because we've got that model the wrong way around. And I think it's because we need to focus on identity. We need to focus less on what we want to have, what we want to like experience, have in the future, and more about who we are and who we need to become in order for those things to be in our lives, in order to allow ourselves to have those things, in order to have the confidence to take the action to get those things, all that kind of stuff. It all comes back to who you are.
So who you are is a big topic. What makes up, or how do we answer? I mean, we've talked about this before, and I've talked about this before, but let's recap. How do you define who you are? Like, what's the stuff that makes up identity?
You have to start with the basics, right? Like, what culture were you born in? What culture do you identify with?
All right, so identity, it's the stuff that makes up who you are. It's, as you said, going back to where you come from, your culture. But it's more than that, isn't it? It's like, what are your beliefs? What are your values?
The best way like that I have found for myself, like I think it's difficult to say like, what's my identity currently? Like that's a really difficult thing to write about or talk about. And the best kind of, not question, but kind of a fill in the blank thing that I have come up with for myself when I was trying to shift. So I was trying to shift consciously from the kind of person who panics at the dentist to the kind of person who does not, panic at the dentist. You can use this stuff for some very small changes in your life as well. And the thing that helped me most was journaling on, I'm the kind of person who. So I'm the kind of person who likes this as opposed to that, or I'm the kind of person who gets angry easily, or like, once you start writing about that, about the kind of person you are, you'll see like what you see yourself as. And that's your identity. That's an identity that it's not like your true identity. Your true identity is your soul, and that's a whole different ballgame, right? But like it's the identity that you've taken on.
Yes.
Right? So could we always, that's an important thing, actually. Holly. I never thought about like explaining it in this way, but that's really important, that like identity isn't something that's like inherent to you. You take it on, and therefore it follows. It's really, really obvious that you can change it. It's like you can change your shirt.
Yeah, exactly. So the next thing we wanted to talk about is, can you change your identity, and why would you want to? So this is a perfect segue into, yes, you can.
Yeah, because if you so either you take it on consciously, right? So like I had, when I was 15, I think, or 16, we moved countries, and we moved countries. That was 16. It was for my senior year of high school. And I was not popular in my sophomore and junior years, and I wanted to be. And so when we moved, I consciously, I knew none of the theory behind this, right? None of it. I was just like, I just want something different. Like, I want to be one of the cool kids. So I'm going to show up in my new school completely different. I think this was like an immense shock to my parents, because literally from like day to day, I changed completely and just took on this whole different identity of cool kid versus like regular high school kid. And so that was very conscious, that because I wanted something to experience high school as a cool, popular kid.
Okay, let's pause for a second. So how did you do that? Because that's quite young to be making such a big identity shift. So were you just observing how the cool kids behaved and then acting like them? Or what were you doing to make that big shift?
It's actually quite interesting. I cannot believe that I did it so consciously and so young. But I really looked at the kind of quote unquote mistakes I made at the school I was at the time that I had moved to. And one of the mistakes I identified was that I didn't consciously choose my friends, because I didn't want to be there. So we had moved to the Philippines from Poland at that time. I did not want to be there. I wanted to be with my friends in Poland. I was really mad, and I was just like, can I swear here or not?
Yeah. Go for it.
Okay. And I was just like, fuck off. Like, I don't want any of you people as my new friends. You all suck. Like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to talk to you. And so even though people were nice to me when I started, because that's the international school system, obviously, like people come and go. So people are used to new kids and all that stuff. I didn't make any friends. And so I was just left on my own, and then like randomly made some random friends, but it wasn't based on that kind of initial spark and kind of initial interest, So that's one of the mistakes that I identified that led me to end up in a certain social group in high school.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So I was like, so I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to show up as if I was already like cool and popular and confident. And I'm going to go up to the people that I want to be friends with and, and identify the people with whom I want to associate. I mean, it also depends on how you define what you want, because to me, the cool kids were the ones who were, not super well behaved and didn't follow the rules. So I fell into a totally different life.
Yeah.
Because of the choices I made on the first days of school of my senior year. But it was very, very conscious. I was like, I am not finishing high school without experiencing this popularity thing.
Wow.
So yes, it was a very conscious decision. And so you can sometimes change your identity consciously. Sometimes it's still conscious, but kind of imposed on you a little bit. Like when you become a mother, that's something that changes, that may be conscious or not, or often in my experience, you don't think it's going to change you as much as it actually does. And sometimes just you pick up just beliefs about yourself based on actions, based on your reactions, based on things people say. Like, I don't know, like if somebody in school called you bossy, you might still have this belief that you're a bossy person. So that's how you perceive yourself, and you probably try to tone it down.
Yeah.
That would be kind of the natural way to react to that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of little girls get called bossy at a young age and get told that that's not a good thing, and then that kind of shapes their beliefs about who they are. And it's like whenever you hear people saying, oh, I'm the kind of person who blah, 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 like they're stating their identity there. They're stating how they see themselves.
Yeah, and so sometimes it can be apologetic. So like I get irritated quickly. Now, is that actually true, or is that an identity that I have taken on because in the past, even maybe for a prolonged period of time, I did get irritated quickly and someone pointed it out to me?
Yeah.
Right? That's up for discussion.
Yeah. Or our teachers told us when we were, in school, you're the bad kid, you're the smart kid, and we get it from our parents. Like I'm an only child, so I obviously didn't get compared to anyone, but I think for people that have siblings, you know what kind of kid you are within the family.
Yeah. So like I have a sibling, I have a brother. He was the one who saved money and I was the one who spent everything I had. Now, how do you think that showed up later? If I think of myself as the kind of person who loves spending.
Yeah.
Right? Like how do you think that shows up?
Shopping.
I love shopping. Oh my God. Like that's like number one on my list of fun things to do. I swear, I love shopping. Isn't that? Yeah, I was going to say, isn't that awful?
Ooh.
So that's clearly some work to do.
Well, not only that, but I mean, it's clear where that's come from because you were told as a kid that you were the spender, your brother was the saver, and your parents clearly valued saving over spending.
And on top of that, it's judged, right?
Yeah.
So on top of that, the saving was good, the spending was bad. And on top of that, it was gender role related. So girls spend, right? Like girls just buy shoes. Like they're not responsible with money. Girls just buy shoes.
Yeah. Or
right. So it took me a very long time to come to a balance. Yeah. Where, yes, I love shopping and I love spending, but I am also really responsible with money. Yeah. And I'm also really good at saving. Yeah. Like I can be both of those things.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So how do we know what our current identity is? As we've said, we get it from parents, we get it from teachers, we get it from people around us. And we also build it ourselves. So we become aware of it ourselves based on how we label ourselves.
The best way, I think, to find out what you think your current identity is, because let's not forget that this is all illusion and it's all taken on, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's a suit you've put on. Yeah. And you may have layered a couple of different suits, but it's still just put on, right? Mm. So the best way to see what you're currently wearing, let's maybe put it that way, is to get a piece of paper, get a notebook, and just write about like, who are you? I am a mom. I am this. I am that. I'm the kind of person who, I don't believe in that. And you'll get a very clear picture.
Yeah. Yeah. Look at all the different roles you play in your life. Like, as you said, mom, sister, brother, daughter, whatever.
And what you associate with those roles.
Your roles and responsibilities that come with those roles.
And how you view that. So like, I'm a mom. Like, what kind of mom? Are you a good mom or a bad mom? Yeah. Right? Like, what do you view yourself as and why? Right? So I could say I'm a bad mom because I get irritated really quickly. Right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that.
Yeah, good. I was like, well, I don't know how to respond to that
one. my sweet little boy told me, he's not so little anymore. He told me yesterday that he loves me just the way I am. So I'm all good. I'm feeling all loved up. It's all good. But and in fact, for a long time, that was part of my identity, that I'm maybe not a bad mom, but a not good enough mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. The mom identity was associated with patient and loving and just flowy and kind and overflowing with like good stuff. And like, that's not what I'm like. I'm really impatient and I do get irritated quickly. But you see how that the way I'm talking about it reveals to you what identity I have taken on, that I am impatient. Yeah.
And then it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So once you develop these beliefs about yourself, then you act accordingly because that's who you are.
And that leads us to the next point in our outline here that we're using to structure slightly this episode. How does our current identity affect our current life?
Yeah.
Right? So all this stuff you believe about yourself plays out because your mind is always looking for proof for the beliefs that you hold. So if I believe that I'm impatient, every time I snap, I'll be like, see, I'm really impatient. See, I'm really impatient.
Yeah, and it reinforces and reinforces and reinforces.
So yeah, our identity what we've taken on, it plays out in our life. It's the actions we take, the things we say yes to, the things we say no to, the things we even notice are available to us are all based on the identity that we currently hold. So, if part of my identity is that it's hard to make money, right, then I'm not even going to see the easy opportunities to make money. Like, those are not even going to enter my consciousness. Like, when you look at brain science stuff, like, it's incredible. Like, I'm always, every time, like, I read about this concept, it blows my mind that we filter out. I mean, I can't remember the percentage, but it was really high. It was like 70% or 90% or something. Like 70%, even if it's 70%, let's say, like, we filter out 70% of the stuff that's coming into our awareness. So it's deleted. Like, it's not like we consider it and think, oh, is this useful, not useful? We just immediately delete it because it's not part of our current worldview. It's not part of it doesn't fit with our current identity. So if I think that making money is hard, I could have a gazillion of super easy money-making opportunities floating all around me, and I am literally not going to see them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I find that, like, scary.
Yeah.
Like, they're here.
Yeah, but the thing is, we have to filter stuff out because otherwise we'd be overwhelmed with all the information and all the details and all the useless stuff. So it's really important to tap into who we need to be to live the life we want and to experience the things we want, so that we can start receiving the stuff that's useful to us. Because right now we're only receiving the stuff that fits our current identity for the life we've currently got. So,
and this is why most people will never get any further. Like, this is the scary bit about this. Like, that if we just leave things the way they are, like, you may think that you're creating big changes, but you're not. And there will be a certain, like, ceiling on the amount of change you can create. And after that, you'll just go back down because you're comfortable with a certain identity. You think things are a certain way. And even, like, if something gets given to you, it'll just get taken away again. It sounds really harsh, but...
No, but it's true. It's like lottery winners. They have the identity of the person they are. They get this sudden windfall of money.
Yeah.
And that should bump them up into a new identity. But if they don't do the work, then they're going to lose it all, which is why so many people lose. I mean, I'm reading this book now called The Sudden Wealth Solution, which is specifically about, like, what to do if you receive a sudden windfall of money, whether it's through inheritance, whether it's through lottery, whatever. If you get, like, a sudden big chunk of money, like, how to deal with that, both practically by hiring advisors, but also by changing your mindset. And this book, very interestingly, was recommended to me by a friend who was saying, I'm not expecting a sudden windfall of money, but I want to have the mindset I need to have so that I'm ready in case this happens to me.
Yeah, because it's not even sudden wealth. It's just wealth in general. Like, if you don't have that mindset, even if you build your wealth slowly, you're still going to either squander it or not let yourself, like, let it grow. And like, this is something that I've considered recently as well, like that difference between manifesting something. So bringing something into your experience or noticing that something is there or receiving something, and the ability to actually hold it in your life and not lose it again. As you know, Holly, like, I received some money through an error and I was like, oh my God, like, this is awesome. And this and that and that. And the next day it was gone.
Yeah.
And I was like, and instead of thinking, oh, like, I'm crap at manifesting, I really made myself consider what actually happened. And I understood that I'm not crap at manifesting. I'm super at manifesting. Look what I manifested. I just didn't have the identity, the belief system to be able to hold on to that. Because if I believe that things like that don't happen to people like me, then it's not possible for me to hold that. So this identity stuff is really, really, really important.
So I would say it's probably safe to say that, some people are happy exactly with their lives right now and that's all they ever want. But some people want something different. They want something more. They want something different. So how do we get clear on who we need to be to make these changes that we want to experience in our lives?
Well, that's my specialty, Holly.
That's why I asked you the question, Joanna.
Yeah, I think it takes a little bit of a process. Like, it's not just, it's really like difficult stuff. Like, of course, like when we talk about it, we want to make it seem easy. And like, when we're selling something, you want to make it into step by step, so that people know what you're talking about. But it's actually quite a difficult thing, because from your current identity, you can't even see what's possible for the next identity, because you're not in that identity yet. So your brain is still filtering that stuff out, even at the ideas phase. So it's really difficult to tap into it from your logical mind. So the way I do it is from the energetic space. So I have this process, which we'll link to, which is a free workshop called Slide into Success, where you tap into the identity of super successful you, however, like you define that, whatever that means. It's not necessarily goal oriented. It's just however you define that successful life for yourself, that fulfilling, fully aligned life. And you tap into that energy first, and then you start seeing like what that person is doing that you're not doing, and they could be really, really small things, right? Yeah. What that person believes that you don't believe, like what that person is focusing on or not focusing on. And the way I like to talk about it is in terms of parallel versions of you, rather than some kind of future you that you need to become. Even though I do use the word become. But I was talking to someone recently who said, actually, it sounds like your work isn't about becoming, but more about sinking into who you already are. And that's exactly it. I thought that was really perfect. But yeah, it's a matter of tapping into that energy. Like, everything in this world exists in the energy field first, and then manifests in the physical. So if you have to tap into it at the energy level first. Otherwise, you won't be able to, like, your brain will just filter it out. Your brain will just delete it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it also really helps to get a clear vision of who this new you is and what that feels like.
Yeah, it has to be based on feeling. I knew someone once who did something really fun. Like, when she wanted to make a decision, like if she had two different things, that she was deciding between, she would spend one day living as if she had decided one thing, and the next day living as if she had decided the other thing.
Oh.
And then she would just compare and see which one felt better. I thought that was really fun, because it really helps you actually be in that energy. I think that's what's difficult. Like, we can talk about the theory of it and what that version of you is doing, forever. Like, it's a matter of actually doing the stuff that the other person is doing, that you're not, and really being in her energy. Like, there's a difference there.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's important to kind of go back to something you said at the beginning about how most people are unsuccessful because they set the goals, they make the plans, and they do, but they leave off that important first step, which is the identity bit. So you still need to take the action, you still need to do the stuff, but you also need to add that identity bit before you start creating the plan and doing the stuff.
Well, because otherwise it's likely that you'll be doing the wrong stuff, right? Because from your current identity, you can only make a plan based on your current identity. It's a slightly chicken and egg thing.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not the easiest of things to kind of decipher. And and I'm not pretending like I have completely figured it out. Like, I teach what I know and we build on that. And, I learn along the way as well. And then I pass that on, right? Like, it has to be that way. But you have to open up to this other person, to this other version of you before you decide what to do. And often when we tap into the energy of this alternate version of you, this alternate identity, we find that the thing that comes as like the next thing to focus on or the next thing to take action on is counterintuitive for us from our current point of view. Yeah. And I get this all the time. People are like, oh, like this popped into my mind, but that can't be right. Right? But it's because it doesn't fit with what we think is going on and where we think we're going, what we think we need to do, and what we've been told is the process. And so if you have the courage to let that go and do the thing that that the energy of that version of you is telling you to do, that's when you can make those leaps between identities.
Yeah. I think it's a big shift, but at the same time, it's very subtle.
It is. Like, the shift is big I was reading something about like the quantum side of this year actually, and I had this big awareness that just felt like so right to me. And of course it makes sense that these big, what we call quantum shifts that we want to experience. So, a huge change in our life circumstances, right? Like from poor to rich, from failure to successful, like those big shifts that we're starting to call quantum shifts, quantum leaps, like they're not about big changes because the quantum level is the smallest possible level. So those shifts, those leaps, those quantum shifts are actually caused by very small things, by very small shifts, very small choices. And the example that was given when I was reading about this was like, if you want to be a healthy person rather than an unhealthy person, as soon as you choose an apple over a Snickers bar, you're being the healthy person.
Yeah.
And if you keep doing that, you'll be the healthy person, right?
Yeah. It's a series of choices.
That. Yeah. We don't like that. That's like super boring. Like I want to eat the Snickers bar and still be the healthy person, right?
Yeah.
But that's from my current identity. I know that when, that person, that healthy person that you want to be, that person gets exercise, that person eats differently. There are differences, and you can see it from observing people who are already living the reality that you want to live, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's why it's so powerful what you did back in high school was you were observing these people that were living the life you wanted to live, and you just, acted like them, and then you shifted into that new identity. That's super self-aware for a teenager.
I think it's my slight Asperger's.
Yeah, exactly.
they're trying to imitate, like not knowing how to act, so trying to imitate everybody else. So I think I was helped along the way.
Yeah, I agree. So sometimes we can be scared about shifting into new identity because it involves losing our current identity, hopefully grieving that loss, because we can be excited to shift into something new and still be sad about what we're leaving behind. So why are we sometimes afraid or sad about making this shift into new identity, even though that's what we want?
This change is scary, right? Yeah. Like you don't actually know like what's going to happen. I've had clients who worked with me for, a while, and things happened in their lives that they weren't expecting. Like their marriage broke up.
Yeah.
And so any kind of change, any kind of growth, like you don't know what kind of ripple effect that's going to have in your life. And that's scary. Like maybe we don't want to deal with that. And let me just say that that's okay. Like if you're choosing to stay in your current identity with your current reality, even though you may know that there might be something more available to you, you're still choosing this consciously.
Yeah.
That is totally fine.
Yeah.
Like it is totally fine to choose comfort over growth.
Yeah. As long as it's a conscious choice and not just like a default mode that you're in.
Or like complaining. Like, so if you're choosing the comfort over the growth.
And still complaining. Yeah.
Then you shouldn't be complaining, right? Because you're choosing it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's the only kind of caveat to that. But in general, like if you're choosing the comfort over the growth, that's totally, totally fine. Actually, there are lots of days when I choose comfort over growth. And sometimes I'm just like, come on, Joanna, like, you know what you need to do. Like, why are you choosing? I'm like, today I just want to be comfortable in my current beautiful life.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So sometimes it feels like life changes our identity for us, and these identity changes are imposed on us. So like you mentioned the client whose marriage broke up. Like, maybe it was her partner who initiated the breakup. So that kind of feels like life has changed things for us. So, I was a wife, I'm no longer a wife. When your children grow up and move out of the house, or, a business goes bankrupt or whatever, like that can feel like, shit, I wasn't ready for this, I don't want this, but life did this to me, and it can be really disorienting. So what to do when we feel like life makes our identity shifts for us? Like, I am no longer a teacher, mother, whatever.
It does feel disorienting, and I don't have an answer that will satisfy really, because really the only thing to do is to be kind to yourself and compassionate and gently move through and create a new identity, take on something new.
Yeah.
Like, right? I mean,
give yourself permission to mourn the loss of the old identity.
Yeah.
And then give yourself time to get clear on what you want moving forward, I think. Because, like, I think sometimes it's hard even when we make the decisions for ourselves. Like I remember when I left my first business and stepped into nothing and took my, extended sabbatical, I call it. Like it was a hard shift for me because, I had been this business owner for 10 years and I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, which is precisely why I took time off and I gave myself permission to have the space. But still, it was really confusing. It was like, who the hell am I?
I think the problem is that often, like, we feel like what we need is space. And to a certain extent, I think that's true. Like, you have to make the space to think about this stuff and consider things or whatever. But I also think that you have to, like, you can't figure out what you want theoretically. Like, so really, you have to just try stuff and see what you like. And I'm saying this not only based on what you just said, but also because what you said reminded me of a client I spoke to yesterday who said that, like, she had taken basically like a month off from everything because she felt like she needed space and she's not feeling good. Like, she's just like, meh. Yeah. Because now she's like, meh. Like, there's kind of nothing happening. Yeah. And I think I think it's easy to get into this feeling that, like, something should clarify, but things can't clarify out of nothing. Like, there's only so much journaling you can do. Yeah. Before you need to, like, get out in the world and try stuff and see what you like and what you don't like with that consciousness of maybe, like, if you've changed in the meantime, then you need to, like, try stuff again and see now, do you like being with people or on your own? Like, do you like to write or do you like to do videos? Like, do you like to, right? Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. I used that time to try. I was like, well, I like baking. And so I started baking, like, gluten-free stuff and selling it to people. And I hated that. So that was not a thing. And, I really liked blogging. So I kind of kept blogging. And, like, I liked, I'd just come out from having, eco hotels. And so I started consulting. Oh, shit. I can't even believe I did this. So I started this blog on, like, eco hotels and, like, found this person came to me that wanted me to consult on them for the hotel, and I hated that. So, like, I was doing stuff. It was like trial and error, trial and error, trial and error. It was like, I like doing all these things. I have all this knowledge. I have all this experience, and I didn't like anything. But I think what you did is slightly different because you've added an extra layer to that, and that's the money-making layer, right? So you weren't just focused on seeing what you like. You were focused on, like, finding something that you like that you could also bring in money with. Yeah, and absolutely. I think that changes the conversation. Yeah. Yeah. Because that's more than identity then. It's, like, not everything that you like is conducive to a business idea. Like, I think that's slightly different, which is maybe why it didn't feel satisfying because, or like you achieved what you wanted to achieve during that time because you thought you were doing one thing, but in fact you were looking for the next career move rather than exactly figuring out, So yeah. And I wasn't aware of the identity thing. Like, I was, like, now in retrospect, I can say I had lost my old identity of entrepreneur, but I was left with nothing, and I wasn't aware of that. Like, I wasn't aware of the fact that I had lost my identity. I just felt really, really lost, and like I didn't know who I was. Yeah, and I think, like, there's, like, the introspection is part of the solution there. So, like, if any of the listeners are feeling like this, like in between identities or just a bit lost, then I think introspection is a good place to start. Like, what would you want to experience in life? Like, even if it's something vague, like, to be happy, because that gives you a starting point, because then you can start exploring what that means and what makes you happy, right? The way I always do it is to start with feelings. How do you want to feel? How do you want to feel in your life? Yeah. And then, then make a list of things that make you feel that way or that you think might make you feel that way. And then do those things and then see how you get on, right? Yeah, exactly. Like, how am I feeling now, today, this week in my life, and how do I want to feel instead? Yeah. Yeah, indeed. That's always, I think the danger is that you may get lost in the feeling lost, right? Yeah, exactly. And that you take that on as an identity. Yes, I was just going to say that becomes your identity. Like, I'm lost. I don't know where I am. I don't know who I am. And that just feeds itself. Yeah, it feeds itself. And of course, when you take that on then as truth,
Yeah.
then your brain filters out everything clarity related, and all you can see is more proof for why you're lost. And we see these people, right? Like either like you could be a person like that who perpetually feels lost in the world, or if you're not, then you'll likely know someone.
Yeah.
Or knew someone at some point in your life who kind of just always felt perpetually a little bit lost.
Yeah.
That's a good thing to be aware of as well. That that's also a choice. That's
Yeah.
also based on a set of beliefs and a set of things that your brain filtered out. Like that clarity is available to you.
And I think we see that a lot in young people who maybe like went to university or is about to go to university or got out of university or never went, and they don't know what to do with their lives, and I don't know what to do, and so they're just living at home, and maybe they have a crappy job and they hate their job, and it's like I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do, and that kind of perpetuates.
Well, that's also like that illustrates a difference between living reactively and proactively, which is the idea that started my whole kind of personal development obsession.
Yeah.
Because you kind of fall into things, don't you? Like you go to a college that's maybe near your home, or that, or that your friends go to, or like in my case, the one that gave me financial aid.
Yeah.
And then so you meet some people there, and then certain opportunities are available to you. And sometimes like if you're living consciously, then you can take this to mean that this was your fate, or this was what you were supposed to do, or, these were the choices you were supposed to take. But a lot of the time we're not living consciously, we're living reactively.
Yeah.
Right? We're not actually proactively considering those choices and even considering them as choices.
Yeah. We're just kind of drifting.
We're drifting, and we think there's like the things that we're living, we don't consider that we have a choice. We think that's just the way things are. And it's kind of like a stuck thing. Like I go to this college, right? Like I don't think that maybe I could quit this college and go do something else. Like I'm now in this reality, and this is what I'm doing. This is who I am.
Yeah. I'm
a college student, right? Same as, I work in marketing.
Yeah.
Right? And you don't think, oh, maybe I could retrain as a nurse. Like that. Things like just usually don't come into our awareness, or if they do, then we think that's not possible.
Yeah.
And then it closes that off until someone in your community, in your environment does something like that. And suddenly things open up, and you think, oh, like if that's possible for her, what would be possible for me? Right? And then you can start to be more proactive about your choices.
So sometimes we don't want to let go of our old identities. Sometimes we hang on to parts of our identity that aren't useful to us, that we label as negative. They feel bad, but that's how we've defined ourselves. So we like hold on to it even though we don't really want it. So like, what's that about?
I just think we identify with things, like it's knowing yourself, or thinking you know yourself.
Yeah.
Is a very like comforting place to be. So like I'm kind of thinking through this as you ask the question, Holly, but I think it's important to kind of understand that we're encouraged to go through this whole journey of self-acceptance, right? Mm-hmm. And now that we're talking about this, I think that's wrong. Okay, let me see how the information is flowing. So let's take my example of being irritated too quickly, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is a part of me that I don't like, let's say, right? Let's say in the past, I don't like this part of me. I feel guilty when I lose my temper, when I get irritated. I feel bad, right? Mm-hmm. So then I go through this journey of self-acceptance. Mm-hmm. I think it's okay. Like, it's okay that I react this way sometimes. Right? Like, it's okay. Like, I'm okay. I'm good enough. I'm enough as I am. I don't have to change. I'm not broken, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. However, what that does is that reinforces in me the identity of being impatient and easily irritable. So all it does is like, so I accept that this is how I am, but that's coming from the assumption that there is a thing called just how I am, which is actually untrue. This is so cool.
See, that's interesting because I see self-acceptance in a different way. To me, and maybe this is, So, okay, so let's say I'm really impatient or irritable or whatever. So to me, self-acceptance is not it's okay for me to be irritable, but I'm accepting the fact that this is how I am today. Like, this is what it's been up until now. But that I don't necessarily to me, self-acceptance is not necessarily placing the value judgment on that's okay. It's just saying, like looking, like being able to look at myself and see that part of me clearly that I don't like.
But that's not acceptance then. Then you're still judging yourself for being something that you're not. Or being yeah.
To me, self-acceptance is about accepting the reality of who I am today rather than being like, that's okay.
All right. So not being at peace with who you are. You still want to just change yourself. Like, yeah. Think an example that's actually like about you, not not the irritability thing. Like, what would be something that you've had to work on in the past to accept in yourself?
No, in the past I have been irritable.
All right.
Yeah. That's not unreasonable. Like I'm not like that now, but like there was a time in my life where I was, overworked, overstressed, in a bad relationship, in a bad situation. And so like the slightest little things would get on my nerves, and I was like always on the edge of like, because everything was kind of shit. So self-acceptance would be, it's okay that you're irritable because you have all these things going on. Like, it's okay. Like, let's not judge that part of you. I think we need to have another conversation about self-acceptance. Yeah, maybe that's our next topic.
And I say this, I say it a lot, that true acceptance is being at peace with that. Like, truly accepting that means not needing it to be different. And I learned this during the intuitive art course I was doing in Dutch, a language I don't speak. That's a different story. But I do remember them saying in Dutch, there are 2 words for accept.
Yes.
And I use this example a lot, and I think of it myself a lot, because it was explained to me that there are 2 levels of acceptance. One is, really accepting unconditionally, like that it's okay. It's okay that I'm irritable. It's okay that I yelled at my kid. It's okay that I did this. Like, it's all right. It doesn't make me a bad person. Doesn't mean anything. It's okay. And the other is I accept it, but I wish it was kind of different. Right? So yeah. I think the conversation at the time was about some behaviors of my mother. And I was like, but I accept my mother. And they were like, no, you don't. Because you kind of wish she was different.
Okay, but so then, is acceptance a good thing? Because as you said, when we truly accept our things, not I accept it, but I wish she was different, but I really accept it, that just reinforces this thing that we don't want.
Well, I think in a way it is good, because self-judgment is one of the most horrible things in our world, right? And it keeps us feeling crappy all the time. Like, it's not, and it's also not useful. Like, if you're judging yourself for being a certain undesirable way, then like that's not going to make you want to change, or it's going to make you want to change from like this horrible I hate myself perspective, which is not conducive to real change, right? So you do need to accept. Maybe that's it. You need to accept yourself first in order to be able to change.
Yeah, but to me, the way I see it is I need to accept the reality of who I am before I can change, but not necessarily be 100% at peace with it.
So I just need to accept that I'm a really shitty person.
But you're not.
That's the reality. But okay, but that's the example. Like, so if I'm if I'm a shitty person, so all I need to do is like just know that I'm a really shitty person.
Yeah, to me, it's the awareness.
Oh, I disagree.
Okay,
disagree.
Okay, so maybe what I'm talking about is self-awareness and not self-acceptance.
Okay. Yeah. And I think both have their place.
Yeah.
But I think we need to be careful that self-acceptance doesn't just root a certain identity that we don't necessarily want stronger into our being, right? Because self-acceptance, the way we're talking about it now, it is actually a springboard for change.
Yeah.
So we've concluded that we can't really change until we have that self-acceptance, self-awareness first, then self-acceptance, so that we're coming at it from a good energy. That's when we can make changes, right? But we need to complete that process. We need to make the change if we want to, right? Because otherwise we just become the kind of person who's just like, I'm just a really shitty person. And that's fine.
Yeah, and a lot of people come at life from that place. They're like, this is just who I am. You're going to have to deal with it.
Yeah, you got to love those people.
Or not. Like, there's people that are like, if you can't handle me at my worst, then you don't deserve me at my best. Like,
oh my God.
I hate that saying. Every time I see it online, I'm like,
I have never heard that before.
You're kidding. No, it's like a thing. It's like an attitude that some people have. If you can't handle me at my worst, then you don't deserve me at my best. Because you should just put up with all my shit. Always.
I think I just snorted. I don't think that's good. I'm trying to contain myself, but
you should accept really your snorts. Accept your snorts. Love your snorts.
Which brings us to our next point, which we kind of mentioned already, that like be careful of this identity stuff because it's all false, right? Like all identities we take on is things that we take on. It's all ego stuff. It's all personality stuff. Your soul doesn't have, it does have some identity, it seems. Like it does seem that some souls are better at this and worse at this and more kind of have more of these qualities rather than others. So there is an element of that as well.
But does that have to do with maybe just the amount of lifetimes that soul has experienced and the different variety of experiences that it's had?
As far as I can see from my very limited vantage point, yes. But I can't obviously give a definitive answer.
No one can. So you said at one point that our true identity is our soul, because that's who we are at the core, lifetime through lifetime. So this is probably branching onto a bigger topic, but I feel like we need to just address it. So what does that mean then? Like, we've got this true identity that's our soul, that we don't really know what it is, most of us. But then we've got our human personality identities. Like, how do you reconcile these things?
Well, I mean, the soul, at that very deep, true level, we talk about the energies of love, of joy, of peace, right? So this is like who you are truly, and everything else is learned or added on top, right? So this is why it's so important to kind of come back to being at peace, acting from a place of love rather than fear, all those kinds of things. But to be honest, like, for our earthly goals of living like the best life we can live, I think that's all you need to know, really, for about the soul in terms of identity. Like, there's a lot of other soul stuff that's useful, but for identity, like, you just know that you're not Holly.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's a very small part of what you actually are.
Yeah. You are the soul that has been through all of these different lifetimes and all these different experiences. And this is just your current experience in physical form.
Yeah, that's it. So, but I'm not sure if in the context of this particular identity conversation, if we need to go into more detail, because I like to keep it very useful, right? Like, I'm very like purpose, like goal oriented. Like, I also want to create more in life and whatever. And I just, we take what's useful and we leave the rest. So I think like there's enough in this conversation for people to get into the meat of identity and, and really focus on what identity they've taken on. I think this is it. The only thing that I think that's important is that you take on identities. So your true identity is the soul. Anything else is taken on.
Yeah.
And so if it's taken on, it can be changed. I think that's the most important piece of information.
Yeah. If you don't like it, you can change it.
Yeah. You've taken it on originally, whether because your parents said this or like whatever you took on when you were a baby, when you were a child. And so you can change it because if you took it on, then you can take it off. Put it on. If you put it on, you can take it off.
We understood. All right. So you've got this offering that's going to be live by the time this podcast goes live. So could you tell us about that? Because it's related to this.
Yeah. So what I noticed was the usual influx at this time of year of planning events and like, sort out your whole 2020 in 3 hours. And it just got me thinking, like, because I love planning, like I love planning.
Yes. My podcast listeners will know the same about me.
Yes. Like I really love planning, but I think that sometimes we jump into planning too quickly. And I was trying to think like why that thought was coming to me. And it's because like planning is super sexy, right? Because you no longer have to be here. right? So we've ended up, I think it's important to talk about this right now, that as a year closes and a new one starts, and in fact, a decade closes and a new one starts, because, okay, we've ended up here in this current space. Like, there are some things you're happy with, some things you're not happy with, some things you're judging yourself for, some things you wish you had achieved but didn't. And it's really tempting to ignore all that and move forward into 2020 and be like, whoa, new decade, new year. Look what I'm going to do. Big goals, big dreams, make a change, etc., etc. Who's ready for change in 2020? These are really, really easy and tempting and sexy places to go to. But are they the most useful? I don't think so, because and it comes back to identity, right? Like first of all, when you plan your 2020 from your current identity, as we said before, you won't even have access to what's possible in a different identity, right? And even if you have a plan, like taking that action, you'll still be taking it from the vantage point of your current identity. So your current limiting beliefs, your current limitations, your current things that you think about yourself. And so your results cannot be different. Like, they actually literally cannot, like, in physical reality, be any different to what you've been getting so far. So if you've been moving forward slowly, that's what you're going to get. You're going to be moving forward slowly, right? If you've been feeling lost, that's what you're going to get. You're going to be feeling lost. Like, you'll have clarity for a second, but you won't be able to hold it because your identity is lost. So what I came up with, or what's been coming through the channel of me, like, I don't know, like, this has been like, it kind of like inspired, soul-inspired action for sure. Like, this wasn't something that I sat down and be like, I want to sell something in December. What should I sell? Like, this was something that just came to me pretty much fully formed, is an advent calendar, because I like to make things fun, virtual advent calendar, where you will every day you get a prompt or a question or a little message that will help you to make peace with and release the parts of 2019 identity that you don't want going into 2020, that's not aligned with the success you want. And we're doing this first before we go into planning for 2020. If you're already done your planning, that's fine. You can do it on the side, right? And then see if your planning changes based on the things you realized about your identity and how things are fitting in and what you need to let go of. Yeah. And this is, super simple process, because I've also come to the conclusion that a lot of energy and beliefs and limiting stuff can be released simply by making it conscious. So we're actually not doing like complicated energy practices, although I have included something where I will go in and make sure that your energy is aligned enough for 2020. So I will, like, anything that's not released, I will release for you kind of thing. But this is not super complicated, because once you make it conscious, it can go. That's when you can make the change.
Yeah. I've really been feeling that lately. Like, I've done, so much Psych-K over the years and so many belief statements and so much. And I feel like I've got to the point where I've rewired my brain so much into thinking and being clear about what I want instead, that I feel like things are shifting even without having to do the work. But I've had to do the work to get to this point. So really getting clear on this stuff is the first step. Yeah,
but I think there's lots of ways you can get clear on that stuff and rewire your brain to do these things. And I just think it's simpler than some people make it out to be. Yeah. And I have definitely noticed in myself I think the power of intention is the biggest power you have. And so if you want to make these changes, if you want to adopt new beliefs, as long as you're clear on what you're letting go and what you're taking on as the new one, so what you're filling that space with, it's all good. So the Advent calendar is a really simple thing where you're just going to answer a couple of questions every day, for yourself, something about 2019 to help you make conscious some of the stuff that's been unconscious so that it can be released, so that you're actually starting 2020 with an actual clear slate.
So how does this work? Do you get an email every day with a journal prompt?
It's a little video, like a 1, 2, 3 minute video every day, and some journal questions. And we have a Facebook group for discussion if you want to join in that. And that's it. So super simple and super effective, because I think we tend to overcomplicate.
Yeah, I agree.
So we'll link to that in the show notes.
Absolutely.
And I think I'm going to keep signups open up until December 4th. Though if you go onto the page and you find that it's closed, message me.
Yeah. And you can get caught up pretty easily.
Yeah.
Good. All right. So identity. Get ready for your new 2020 identity.
Yes.
Yay!
Decide what you need. First, release.
Yeah.
2019. Do not forget that step. So sexy, tempting to be going into 2020 without doing this. You know, like it really, and I'm not any better, by the way. Like I'm the person, you know, like in planners, you always have the token one page that says like, what are you celebrating about the year that's ending, right? Let's close it off. Like even the token page, I would usually skip.
Oh, wow.
I'd be like, don't need that. I'm all good. You know, new year. That's what I want. New start, new beginning.
Yeah. It's tempting, but
it is. It is tempting.
But you got to know where you're coming from and what you want to get rid of.
Yeah. And where you are today. So I think, the marketing around these things doesn't make it super easy to make this decision. But if you're listening to this and it's like, deeply resonating with you, then make sure that you follow that. Yeah, exactly. And if you have questions, email Joanna. All right. So I think this was a good one. I think this was a good one. Please let us know. If you have questions about identity stuff, like I love talking about this. I think this is so fascinating. So if there's anything that's unclear that maybe Holly and I could do a separate episode on to go deeper into, then please let us know. We would totally love to do that. Yeah. And if there's any other topics that you want us to talk about, please let us know. I find it really useful when listeners give us the topics because then we know we're talking about something that you want to know about. All right. So I will have all the links in the show notes and you can see us there. Thank you. So thank you for listening. Please drop me a line and let me know what you thought about this week's episode. You can email me at holly@hollywharton.com or find me online and get in touch there. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a quick review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to this podcast. It would mean the world to me. Thank you again for listening. I keep saying that, but that's because I'm really, really grateful that you're tuning in every week. And remember to visit hollywharton.com/332 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Wharton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollywharton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Wharton. That's patreon.com/Holly Wharton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.